The first profoundly demonic, and if you will, I would even say satanic interaction that I had, interjecting into the physical realm in a very tangible way. I was 5, and it opened a door of darkness in my life that was just almost unfathomable. If I recall correctly, I think it was that night that a physical demon jumped out of a tree and grabbed onto my back.
And then it's 3 prayers that I try to pray when I'm approaching God, when I'm activating like the armor of God for the day for me. When I get to the helmet of salvation, I say, silence the voice of the enemy in my life. Then I pray and I ask God, silence my own thoughts that would betray and deceive me.
That's good.
And lastly, I say, tie my mind to the mind of Christ. If I'm attached to the source, then I should be able to ascertain when the source is speaking.
Because through much of my life, the lines between the realms were so blurry for me. I hit a point, I told the Lord, you got to turn it off.
What if I told you you were meant for something more? And what if at first sight your birthright was inked in blood? And what if dominion was written in big bold letters? And what if we shouldn't just occupy but overcome? And what if the observation of opposition was us? Antikemi, the podcast. Hey, before we jump into the episode, I just had to hop on and say thank you to everybody who has consistently rocked with the Antikemi podcast. And wow, we are striving to ensure we present the very best quality. Unfortunately, this last episode, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty at the beginning. And so for the first 20 minutes or so, you'll only see my point of view shot. But we got it corrected, and I know it will be worth you sticking around and hearing what we get into. So thank you once again. Enjoy the episode. We love you.
Welcome back yet again. You are tuned in live to the Antikemi podcast. I am one half of your host. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Schulz.
Are you sure? You paused.
It took me a minute. I double checked with my sources. I was totally squirreled out.
Yeah. It took you, the enemy was trying to take you out before you got here.
Today was stupid. I don't even want to talk about it.
It was one of those days, right?
This thing can go hang out with Monday.
I know. But I'm happy that you made it. I'm happy
We're here.
You are here.
Take that, devil.
Right? It's been kind of a interesting, crazy week so far. But good things are coming. Regardless. I just leave it at that.
Be.
Regardless, right?
They gotta be.
Oh my God. So we want to just jump right in. You got something on your heart? Something that's burning?
The background for the background noise for today is loud, but I think even in our personal lives, just the office, everything, it just was one of those days you just couldn't seem to, I don't know. Teams wasn't working. Go ahead. What were you
I was just
going
going to say, I like the way you put that. The background noise.
Right.
And I think the way that you identified it, 2 things. As background, it wasn't in the foreground.
Yep.
Unless you let it be.
Right.
And it was noise. And
right.
We've mentioned before the difference between identifying noise and signal. And so I guess making the choice to push past the noise and hone into the signal it's easier said than done. And on
Right.
days when the noise is especially loud, I don't know. I think that we fool ourselves at times being comforted by the noise.
That's uncomfortable.
I think even as a parent, especially, when you get to a place, you ever been inside like a Walmart or out in public and you hear that baby that's like screaming or crying or like yelling, mom, mom, dad, 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 and the parent is just tuning them out. They're not paying them any attention at all until
That's my house every day.
every day. Or even being at like a park or whatever, and there's like noise and kids playing everywhere, and the parent could be on their phone or just having a conversation, but a child cry out, and they're able to pick out the sound of their child.
Yes.
And they'll just stop and usually go and attend to them. And it's kind of phenomenal just because it's like, how did they pick up their child's cry, their child's voice out of all the noise?
Yeah. There's a similar deal when they're infants and they're always making some kind of noise all the way up through like toddler when they're not talking but they're making racket constantly.
Right.
And you very quickly learn to identify because you have no choice. You have to tune out the noise. Like it just becomes background. Mm-hmm. But you learn what an offended cry sounds like. You learn what a spoiled, grumpy, cry sounds like. You learn what a tired cry sounds like, and you learn what a serious, like somebody needs to go help. Have you had that experience where your kid starts to cry and you just go, you're there, like you're out of here. Like that's not normal.
Right. Or what my mind just went to is like, you hear that cry where it's like an entitled cry, like I just want to throw a fit.
Yeah.
And usually I try to step right in and try to correct that.
Excuse me.
Right. Because I want to be able to trust your cry.
Right.
Don't abuse the privilege you have to gain my attention.
Yeah.
Because I feel like my attention is valuable. And I'm not saying that my child has to barter my attention or even earn my attention, but I do want to help train them to use what's valuable and use it in a way that they appreciate. Because the last thing, one of the first things I tried to like really drill down into my oldest is like, like don't cry wolf.
Yeah.
Like telling them that story and understand like the power of like, man, when you're crying wolf, it puts you in a position where it's like, I don't want to ever have to second guess when you're actually hurt.
Right.
Or you're actually needing help. Just because you don't want to do something.
Yeah.
You're over it. You're tired.
Yeah.
That's good.
You started to say something about finding comfort in the noise. I don't know where you were going with that.
Well, I was basically saying that we as parents, we find comfort in the noise because then when it gets too quiet.
Right. Then there's a whole other.
That's a different level of like response of like, hold on. It's a little too quiet inside here.
Yeah.
I know people, they're just uncomfortable in the silence.
That's super common now.
Right. They have to have some sort of stimulus going.
Yeah.
It's kind of going back to what we talked about recently about being bored and allowing you just to kind of sit in that silence and be bored. But I think even deeper than just being bored. Actually, let me back up real quick. My mom, shout out to my mama.
Shout out to
she's been tapped into the podcast every episode.
Come on now, Mama Bruce.
She sent me something that was revelatory. I think I'm gonna share it because it was good. She was saying like when she watched the episode talking about the board games that we play and how we use the word bored. What her mind went to was that you need to be bored.
I see where you didn't get it from nowhere.
Apparently not. Like she I was like, okay, mama. And what she was saying was that when you drill a hole, you create the capacity
Yeah.
for it to be filled.
Yeah.
And how we need to allow the Lord to kind of operate on us. Like,
Yeah.
you need to be bored.
Yeah.
And this is why. And so she took it from a different point of view. And
I like it.
I loved it too. I was like, this kind of goes right along the same lines of what we were bringing out. And so, yeah, like, I encourage you guys, if you are kind of gaining insight, revelation, knowledge, something that we could have, expanded upon. Yeah, we want to hear from you. We want to hear those type of that type of feedback.
Yeah, agreed. If it brings things up for you, whether that's questions or it spins you into a line of thought that you found profitable, I really want to see the whole. This is Antikemi the podcast, but I really want to see the whole thing take off as an actual resistance movement of people helping each other.
Yeah.
Come out of Babylon in our day-to-day existence, distinguish between the holy and the common, distinguish between manipulation and mystery, distinguish between truth and error, all these things that are so profoundly challenging and also mission critical to representing the kingdom of heaven during the age of the great deception.
Yeah.
I want to see that develop as we go, that we're actually a band of brothers, helping each other make it. There's been a lot of movements like that, grassroots movements, for good and for bad, in recent years. The internet has enabled it, where people suddenly you're crowdsourcing wisdom and knowledge, sometimes foolishness, but it's more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Because there's this beehive effect.
I got a question though.
Yeah.
This may sound crazy. If you're in an elevator and you were to give somebody an elevator pitch.
If I'm in an elevator, okay.
I guess you would have to be in an elevator to give.
Well, I thought you said if I'm an elevator, but then you had me pitching, so now I know we're in the elevator. Okay.
Well, you are an elevator, sir. Don't sell yourself short. I speak life over you.
Look at you speaking life in the mirror.
Speak life over you, sir. But if somebody were to ask you, you keep telling me we need to get out of Babylon. I'm comfortable in Babylon. Why?
So that would assume somebody that even knows what I mean.
Right.
But that's exact what you just said. This isn't the elevator pitch, which is for the record, which is a very good, I guess, point to come back to at some point, which is like, how do we say that elevator pitch? Because I think that's important to be able to do that. But your question directly ties into what I'm thinking about tonight, because when I make the remark about the background noise, even in our personal and like our office life,
yeah,
the background noise to this podcast shoot was a lot. And then we're having this discussion about the noise and the signal in our home lives, our daily lives. But I did note on the way over here, I've referenced this before. We've talked about this a little, but about a third of the way over here tonight, I realized that I had gone from listening to something in the background that was informative and it was something that I had purpose in listening to, and it had crossed over into just some entertainment that was going on in the background. Gotcha. And I realized, okay, this is probably one of those moments where it'd be good for me to be quiet for a few minutes, just get in some of that silence. And,
right.
I was praying under my breath already. I just turned it off. And so as soon as you turn off the noise, you're immediately confronted by it's all, to me, I find it jarring because when the external inputs, we talked about that with the default mode network, when the external inputs cease, one of the first things that you'll notice is however much noise is actually going on inside of you. And in fact, I saw, I almost said, hey, bro, like, how would we do that thing where you watch something on the podcast and comment on it? Because this girl, it was just a reel or a TikTok, and she just jumped on saying, like, how's it going to be 1:30 in the morning and God just, like, flattens me with, like, backhands me. She said she was, lying in bed thinking about the day, the week, and trying to wind down and talking to the Lord, because she tries to do that before she goes to sleep. And she's, decompressing, and she's thinking, man, I have not been sleeping right this week. She said, I haven't gotten to sleep before 5 a.m. hardly any days this week. And she said, every night when I turn off everything and try to, like, go to sleep, start unwinding and talk to the Lord a little, she said my mind just goes into hyperdrive and God talks to me. So she said, like, he's been talking to me until, like, late at night, and I haven't wanted to miss it. So I've been like, this is a real young girl. Like, I'm going to guess she's in college probably, And she's saying, he's been talking to me late in the night. I haven't been wanting to miss it, but it's killing me during the day. And so she said to God this night, she's trying to get to bed at a better time. It's like 1 o'clock. By 1:30, with this going on, she can feel it happening again. She says to God, do you hate days? Like, why don't you talk to me during the day? Like, what's up with you? Because I'm trying to get some sleep.
Right.
And she said she said, I know it was God because I don't think this way. I don't talk this way. She said it wasn't anywhere near my awareness. But she said it was just crystal clear, the answer. You don't shut up until 1 or 2. You've got stuff going, you're going. This is my chance.
You don't give me an opportunity to even get through to you.
Right. She's like, so y'all, I'm probably going to be like, I'm not going to be off this app, but I'm taking a step back because I'm realizing I actually don't give God any space to speak in my life. And she was talking about silence, and she was just talking about finding that stillness, turning things off. And so I thought of that when I turned off the noise in my car and realized it was very noisy in my head. And I realized that I had been anesthetizing just for a little while, but it's in a world where you have to interact with a lot of noise just to be effective, and most of us have a lot of noise just to be effective, do what we do, keep up with what we keep up with. If you're missing that line where it's like, no, periodically Jesus withdrew.
Yeah.
If you're missing that cue, the windows are pretty narrow to get it inside of the healthy rhythm of a life, which is one of the things I'm really struggling with because I've been trying to sleep at night. And so because I'm not walking the neighborhood all night.
Hold on.
Yeah.
For those of you who are confused by that last statement, he's trying to sleep at night like the rest of us. There was a period of time where this man was just not sleeping at night. And
30 years, give or take.
So now you sleeping at night is...
It's jacking with...
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I had a phenomenal prayer life and study time and and it was healthy. I
Yeah,
was
you had
walking.
24 hours. The rest of us only had about
I,
only about 14.
I had hacked the game.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And now I'm trying to live for the next levels.
Yeah.
And so my cheat code isn't working anymore.
Oh, that's funny.
And it's just as I suspected. Sleeping at night is terrible for my.
Say that. Do not recommend. Speaking of that, though, do you remember when you told us in our one of our meetings, and you mentioned people who primarily, like dreamers, if God is speaking to you primarily only through dreams, not just dreams, but only through dreams, that's a little bit cause for pause, because it's like he has to knock you out to talk to you, for you to like shut up and listen. You know what I mean? And so that kind of got me thinking, like, man, do I create capacity for the Lord?
Come on.
I mean, hey, ask yourself this question. Do you create capacity for the Lord?
Right.
That's a question we really need to like interrogate ourselves with.
Right.
I saw a buddy of mine I saw on Facebook, and he just had a picture of this flip phone. He said,
I remember those.
He was like, it's time. I waste so much time on my smart device. I'm just disgusted.
Yeah.
I say I'm creating content. I barely create the content.
Right. That's
my
true
time
for
and
most
energy is
people.
being wasted.
Yeah.
No, all I need to do is talk and text.
Let me ask you this. If we do that, if some of us decide it's time to take that jump, do you think we'll be addicted to Snake again?
Something. Yeah. I mean, between Snake, between some sort of, there's going to be something that's going to try to harvest your
Isn't
time.
that crazy?
It is.
Because we were chasing like 1 pixel wide, however many pixels long you could get around like a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch screen.
3 by 5. Yeah.
With our little arrow. I agree. And it was way less so than it is now. But it's wild when you track how much this has happened at each step of the way. It's just we're in like end game territory. We're actually not in the end game. We're edging up on the end game, because in my opinion, the end game here is all of this tech is integrated into us. We become the tech.
We become the tech.
And that's a line that believers ought to be drawing some hard boundaries around. Mm-hmm. But that is where we're headed. And very like alarmingly quickly, so much quicker than people think. So this biometric stuff, this human or body area network and all of that stuff is coming so much more quickly than I think probably over 99% of people are still blissfully unaware, certainly of where we're at in that process.
Yeah.
But so that next level of integration is, I mean, to say it's nightmarish and it's a Black Mirror episode to end all Black Mirror episodes. It's but of course it's going to have incredible upsides, and just like all these other aspects of
that's how they get you though.
Yeah, it's going to be a revolution. There's going to be a good pitch, really good pitch, and so bottom line is, your buddy talking about going back to the old phones and all that. I mean, I do think that you're going to see people making some decisions to forego a level of convenience and connectivity that has had its upsides, significant upsides, because it becomes increasingly challenging, bordering on at times impossible to delineate how far all of that convenience is allowed to intrude on your soul, on your space, on your, the inner sanctum of your life. So this is kind of what, when we begin to find comfort in the noise and we begin to anesthetize with noise, because this girl made this comment on this TikTok about how the Lord knocked her over with this, you don't shut up until 1:30 in the morning. That's why I wait until 1:30 in the morning to start talking to you.
Goodness.
And it goes back to what you're saying. When the Lord only gets through to you one way consistently, I think that's almost always a reason to like interrogate your life a little bit. For me, one of the last stands, I'm a person that notices patterns all the time. And so one of the ways that I'm able to tell that my life is in alignment in certain ways, or that the Lord is trying to catch my attention about something, is I'll often see number sequences again and again and again and again, and I'll start to understand the association. Like every time I think about this, I see 333, or every time I think about so these sequences will start to jump out at me, and all that's happening is I'm noticing the fingerprint of God. Some people would say that's all, there's patterns everywhere in life. Yeah, God is everywhere. So what you're seeing is the fingerprint of God. But for me, that numbers sequence, if that's the main way that I'm catching cues, I know I'm in pretty late stage disconnect with God, because that's one of the last walls to fall for me.
Man, that's so good. For you, how long did it take you to realize that's one of the last stages? Because if anything, people would be like, oh, that's like God's like talking to me like special.
I mean, I know people who are in the process of awakening from out of the stupor of this age and into a level of conscious awareness of reality as it really is, and the things of God as they really are, and they are seeing numbers everywhere for the first time, and they're trying to parse through, like, is this new age? Is this witchcraft? What is this? Why am I suddenly seeing this? And so my encouragement to them is always, no, you're seeing the fingerprint of God. Like you're starting to get it. But then you can grow to a point where God talks to you in a multiplicity of ways. And then if you start to see, and you'll know yourself, you'll start to see, actually, I'm only ever getting this kind of cue or that kind of cue. And I think for most people, you'll find that once you get down to, there's just one thing happening in your life that you can recognize that God is giving direction or speaking, you're already, you've in my opinion, you've grown distant. There's disconnect there. Carnality's rising. So you got to like withdraw.
Yeah.
And go be with the Lord. You'd be amazed what 20 minutes can do. So yeah, it's not unattainable. You'd be amazed what 5 minutes will do.
Now I got to ask you this, because I'm sure there's somebody who has listened so far and they're hearing you talk about hear the voice of God. How does somebody hear the voice of God or know they're hearing the voice of God?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to start with the most basic answer, because it always shocks me when I ask people, have you read the Bible from cover to cover? Mm-hmm. And it shocks me how often the answer is no. Right. So I'm going to say, if you're one of those that haven't, and hey, when I say read the Bible, if listening to it is how you're going to get it done the first time or whatever, like everybody should know about the Bible Project. They have a channel on YouTube. They have a podcast. They have a website, Bible Project. Everybody should know about that. There's incredible tools like that. But man, that's a great one if you're just like, you kind of don't know where to start and none of it makes any sense. Always go see what the Bible Project said about the book you're about to read in the Bible. Because it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect in this world, but man, it'll help you. And to me, just so beneficial. But so listen to the word, read the word, like get the word in you. And I think we always say that because it's like, if you want to know how someone speaks, a good place to start is the written record they've left, right?
Right.
But then, man, I'd be interested how you would respond. But for me, the key in my life has been simply doing the things that are good for raising spiritual awareness, like fasting and taking time out to pray and or meditate, or I would say pray and then if you can meditate. If you're going to do just one, pray. But spend some quiet then if you can. And ask the Lord specifically before you read the Bible, when you go into your fast, when you ask the Lord specifically, make me aware, because I think we spend so much time trying to hear his voice. And you need to understand that most people do not hear an audible voice. Many don't hear an audible voice once in their life. I've heard an audible voice, but
it's been 2 times for me.
Right. For me, it's once very clearly, and once I remember it as audible, but I can't remember if the audible was inside or
like
you know what I
knowing.
mean?
Yeah.
But it was like it had sound to it, but I don't know if the sound hit my eardrums or if it was just
Imagine
like when you hear something in a dream.
Yeah.
But it was sound. But so both of us, we've spent our lives pursuing God, and both of us are saying, yeah, a couple times there's been an audible component. So don't worry about audible. Some people go their whole life and don't have that experience. But when we say hear God, we're talking about an awareness of what God has to say about your life and his will in it. And so I would encourage you to get familiar with his voice through the word, then invest in the things we know are good for heightening the spiritual senses, and specifically ask him to make you aware of the way he speaks into your life. And then just wait and expect it, because he will. Ask him to make you aware, because it's not that he's not speaking, and it's almost certainly, if you're a believer, to me, it's not that you're not hearing. It's not that you're not hearing, it's that you're not hearing. So it's what you said a little while ago about in a noisy house. You just haven't learned how to distinguish that one sound that you're supposed to be like on alert for. The sound is bouncing off of you. His voice is bouncing off of you. It's not that it's not present, it's that you haven't learned to distinguish it, in my opinion. So I think
That's good.
That would be, I don't know what you would say, but for me, I would say do the things that help raise those senses and tune you in that way. Ask for the awareness and expect it, but I would encourage you, you're not trying to hear something you've never been able to hear before. You're trying to discern something you've never picked out of the noise before.
That's so good. If I would add anything, I would definitely double down on what you're saying as far as become intimately aware what his voice sounds like.
Yeah.
if you're spending like the adequate amount of time in his word, hearing or reading
Yes.
how other people who definitely heard the voice of God, how they interacted with the voice of God, right?
Yep.
And he's consistent in his word. How he was able to gather people's attention to himself. And how he was patient enough that, I think you've preached about this. I wonder how many times Moses may have saw that fire, that bush burning,
Mm-hmm.
before he was curious enough to
Come on, man.
come close enough to investigate it.
Come on.
And now, once he's close enough and he's still enough, this voice is speaking to him out of this phenomenon that's happening, right? Because we know that fire destroys,
Yes.
but something is still there, present,
Yes.
even amongst the fire.
Yes.
So he's hearing the voice of God speak to him. And so, like, just hearing how people have acclimated themselves to the voice of God, I would also say start, like you're saying, when you ask God for the awareness, I've asked God to kind of make me sensitive to the different ways that
100%.
he speaks. Number one, a lot of times, most of the times, he's not going to speak outside of what he's already written down. He's
Right.
said a lot.
Most of what he says applies what he wrote to this moment.
Right. Like, I'm trying to remember who it was. Yeah, it was John Maxwell, I believe. John Maxwell, he was like at a university or doing a talk. Somebody paid money to come see him, got in line to ask a question.
Which Maxwell money is.
Right.
Yeah.
He gets in line to ask a question, waits his turn, comes up to the microphone, asks John Maxwell a question. And I forgot what question he asked him, but John Maxwell takes a moment and looks at him and said, I answered that question in this book I wrote about 2 years ago. Have you read that book?
Yeah.
He was like, no. He says, I find that very odd that you would be here waiting in line to come and ask me a question that I've already answered.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Yeah.
The answer's in the book.
Yeah.
And like people were just like, oh my God. It's just like, yeah, but what? He's already said this answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. In other words, read the body of work.
Read it. Like actually read it. And then read it again.
Yeah.
And then read it again.
Yeah.
And then it's 3 prayers that I try to pray. And I've shared it with a lot of people who I've talked to and mentored. When I'm approaching God, I try to make it a part of my morning prayers. When I'm activating like the armor of God for the day, for me, when I get to the helmet of salvation, I say, silence the voice of the enemy in my life.
Mm.
Then I pray and I ask God, silence my own thoughts that would betray and deceive me.
It's good.
And lastly, I say, tie my mind to the mind of Christ.
It's good.
Let his mind be in me. And so if I'm attached to the source, then I should be able to ascertain when the source is speaking.
It's good.
And that's been helpful for me. And I'm not saying I've got it right all the time. I think there's times where I've definitely tried to attribute what God said, and it wasn't him. It was my own desires that I felt were matching his, and so I had a green light, I thought. Nothing to do with God. I think God and the devil get blamed for a lot.
It's true.
they get blamed for a whole lot.
It's true.
They got nothing to do with either one of them, right? And we just take out all accountability in the middle of some things that the Bible says that we're drawn away by our own lust.
Yeah.
And lust, as we know, is not just a sexual thing.
Not at all.
It's just like unquenchable desire, you know. And it's our own.
Yeah.
that we're drawn away from it. So we got to kind of interrogate, like you were saying, like, man, are you interrogating yourself and allowing yourself to be emptied out enough, silenced, and shut in enough to be able to properly interface with the Most High? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because you are you're a receiver and you're a transmitter by nature. Like people don't realize that, you know, there is radioactivity, there's vibrational exchange, there's biofields around each of us, there's our geomagnetic sphere, especially from our heart. Our heart puts out a larger magnetic field than our other organs, and so the there's a lot of God designed you. Okay, let me put it this way. Did you ever have an FM radio with a busted antenna, or like an antenna that for whatever reason wasn't quite cutting it?
Well, in my home, the radio was the devil's music.
I know, but
So.
when you were sneaking in your bedroom,
I did have my little transistor radio inside my bedroom. So with a busted like receiver?
Yeah, well, the antenna, not maybe it got busted off, or it just wasn't cutting it.
Yeah.
Maybe you've never had this experience, but you can often go grab what the antenna or what's left of the antenna, hold it, and all of a sudden the station will come through clear.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
If what people don't realize is you are a receiver,
because you made contact with it.
But you are actually enabling the radio to receive the signal. The signal is coming through you to the radio.
Yeah, that's good.
We think that the radio is giving us the signal, but it's not. It's interpreting it for us. We're getting the signal. The radio sits over there and gets the signal too and interprets it for us. But if the radio is having trouble getting the signal, we can attach ourselves to it and enable the radio to get the signal so that it can interpret it out to us. So we are receivers. We're receiving all the time. We're transistors. So we are also putting something out all the time. So I think the word there is transceivers. Yeah. You're a receiver and a transmitter. So you are already receiving the signal. You just haven't learned how to tune in past the noise to be able to interpret the signal. So, but you being able to grab a broken antenna and cause a radio to be able to receive the signal ought to prove to you that you are receiving signal all the time.
You're created to do that.
You're created to do that.
Yeah.
So, because of that function, I think most people that are not aware of the voice of God, and I would say all believers, if you're a true believer and you're not aware of the voice of God or not often aware of it, you have a tuning problem or a tuning challenge, and you have maybe a volume challenge, but you're getting the signal. You just need to learn how to isolate and identify it. And what you said about the John Maxwell story really rings true to me, because like, right now as we record, we're in the fall feast, the winter feast of the Lord.
Yeah.
And as often happens, at this time of year, especially in years where it's abundantly evident that there's many signs pointing at the imminent return of the Lord and all of that. False prophets have arisen.
Boy, have they.
Yeah, that's the thing. It kind of they reached an audience that kind of dwarfed what we've seen in most of the past. I think we've seen I think our parents, I often heard about 88 Reasons He's Coming Back in 88. So there have been moments. But 1988, even numerically, you can see why people were thinking, and the Cold War and all that. So you can see why people were thinking
it's time.
It's time. So I think when global events start to coincide with biblical timelines, people start to go, and there's always either opportunists or just deceivers, because the opportunist is not always the person doing the deceiving. It can be the serpent that sent them on the mission. So that doesn't excuse them from being a deceiver, but it's not always conscious on the part of the deceiver, but often I think it is. They're just opportunists. And so this time, because of the nature of social media and the level of knowledge that has increased in the earth, where a lot of people are aware now that these are the feasts of the Lord, there's a lot more people, especially in the younger generations, that are aware of some of these things. And so they're going, actually, when they hear somebody saying, I know when the Lord's coming back, that may trigger a connection in their mind. Hey, the date that person said coincides with it. In this case, this year it was trumpets, and now they've bumped it off to tabernacles. But as we record this episode, all this noise is going on, and these false prophets have attracted massive audience because of the nature of how much knowledge has increased and how easy communication is. So you've got prophets across continents claiming to speak for God, who what they are saying flies in the face of biblical record. In fact, they themselves are a clear sign of the times, because they are among those who are saying,
he's over here.
He's over here.
Yeah.
Look,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So they fulfilling their part.
Luke 21, Matthew 24, they're doing their part. So, and they have given rise now to mockers.
And the mockers are just waiting for the opportunity to come out and say, yeah, y'all are a bunch of idiots to believe this.
And we've now given them that opportunity.
Yeah.
And if they don't repent, we have, I think I said this on another podcast recently, but we have complicated things for them on Judgment Day. It will be worse for them now that they've added being a mocker to the list if they don't repent. And the false prophet, the ravening wolf that triggered that opportunity for them to mock, will be called to account for that. So will they, but he will too. And so it was distressing to me to see, TikToks of people weeping about how their loved ones won't believe them. They can't reach them. They're just so sad that they're going to be, either caught in the tribulation while everybody else gets a free pass, or they're going to be, eternally damned. And now I just think about how much more complicated the process is going to be for those people to try to reach those loved ones after they pick up the shattered pieces of their own faith, assuming they're able to even deal with the shame and the confusion and the embarrassment and it all. And I say this with no, I'm not saying this to shame anybody. Like I'm telling you, my heart is hurting for these people. I'm not, this is not throwing stones or kicking somebody while they're down. I just need you to know you could have avoided this if you had known the word. Because if you knew the word, you would have recognized that person hasn't heard from God because God won't say that.
Whew. Don't even recognize what God would and would not say.
I mean, I think we've talked about this, but I don't know if it was in this venue, but how many times have you heard someone will tell you that someone said something about you and you don't even have to, you don't have to go investigate because that's not that person's voice.
I think you mentioned your wife when you gave that example the first time. And I'm the same way. Someone could tell me something that my wife said. And if it doesn't match who I know her to be, her character, how she carries herself, or even how I know she thinks, I could dismiss it.
You don't even have to, it doesn't have to slow you down.
Right.
You might have to practice a little discernment to know why that person said that to you, because it could be they're just a lying, conniving, but it also could be that their own trauma caused them to think they heard something that they didn't hear.
Confuse what was being said, twist up the words, misrepresent it. That happens all the time, right? I think about, too, it's the age-old example of bankers who are learning, like tellers, when they're learning how to spot counterfeit money.
Wow.
The training they give them is they don't give them a bunch of examples of fake bills. They don't study fake counterfeit money. They study the real thing.
Yeah.
They only put in front of them the real deal.
Yep.
And they become so intimate with the real deal, the feel of it, the look of it, the smell of it, that they can spot a fake immediately because it doesn't fit the real deal.
Right.
And that's what we got to really start doing, especially as believers. Like, man, study the real thing.
Yeah.
The genuine article. Study that. And so when the clear counterfeit presents itself, it doesn't match the genuine. Doesn't match.
In other words, if you know the genuine article, it's going to be very hard to deceive you with the knockoff. And that's why if you go to get a Versace bag authenticated, you liked the bag because whatever, it popped. But that's not at all what the professional you're bringing it to is looking at. They're going to the grain of the leather, the stitching, the direction of the stamp, the way the stamp lays on the leather, the way the lining is done. Like I think it's Louis Vuitton that I think the lining on the inside of a Louis Vuitton is always, the LVs are always right ways and wrong ways because they do the one piece. Just little things like that. They're looking at the details that let them know whether this is up to the standard of the designer that's being credited. And so what does that tell you? That tells you they haven't studied the counterfeits. They've studied the genuine article.
I love it because I just read a book by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
Blink.
Love me some Matt and go, oh, I
Have you
haven't
ever read
read
that?
that yet. No.
And so he explores like the power of thin slicing. And it's this concept of making quick decisions or judgments based on limited information.
Yeah.
And he argues these snap judgments, they can be remarkably accurate. Sometimes even more reliable than long, drawn-out analysis. And he gives a lot of different examples. He opens up about like this man who's able to like instantly spot this art forgery. And it was like expertly forged and fooled everybody. I mean, like this thing was inside museums. It had like, they were trying to auction it off for millions of dollars. And he just kind of, when he approached it, like he got that check. And he was just like, something fell off. But there was nothing from the outside looking in that would like corroborate why he felt it. But he didn't let the feeling, bother him too much until it started nagging at him. And then upon further, research, they were able to determine like, oh, this actually is a forgery. It doesn't match what it needs to be. But he was able to make that off of a very quick judgment. And I just love how he talks about, how trusting your gut can be valuable, but it's important to train and refine.
That's right.
That instinct. Knowing when to rely on it and when to slow down and think deeper is important.
I mean, so now you've just opened a whole can of worms because...
Let's go, can of worms.
Trust your gut is good advice.
Yeah.
It's better than don't trust your gut. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect advice, though.
No.
The vast majority of us in the modern world, and that literally, like a large majority of people, have significant issues with their gut in the developed world. It's also true for other reasons in a lot of the underdeveloped world, water sources, that kind of thing, that have produced parasitic stuff. So there's reasons why gut biome tends to be challenging, but in different ways. And throughout much of history, it's been better. And in some parts of the world, it is better than it is for most of us in the developed West. But, like Korea, so much fermented food, they're doing much better than we are on this. And there's other examples like that. But here in the developed West, where we are, and America is by far the worst offender, the vast majority of us, our gut biome is way off.
It's
and
trash.
And we don't understand. That's connected to our dementia. It's connected to the stuff that we're dealing with in terms of inflammation-related diseases, right?
Because they say our mind.
Yeah, the mind-gut connection.
What the body's mind, I've heard, like,
is your gut.
Is your gut.
Yeah. And there are even neurologists now that are calling into question whether the brain is the seat of consciousness. And I don't know the answer to that, but there are neurologists and whatever they call brain scientists that are actually questioning, like, because we don't know that for sure. That's something we have inferred. But in the ancient world, the vast majority, certainly in the biblical mindset, they were thinking of the gut as the seat of consciousness. My heart, my core, my middle, my bowels, Jeremiah said. So they were thinking of that. So yes, and the gut at least is the mind of the body. And so when the gut is off, when the biome's off, and the barrier, that's the other thing, the gut barrier that keeps forever chemicals and stuff from transversing into our major organs and bloodstream and all that, when that is what's the word I'm looking for? Compromised. All kinds of things get thrown off. Well, Brother Phillips used to say, when he was feeling impressed by the Holy Ghost in a certain direction or the other, he'd say, man, the old abdominal brain is just rumbling. And a lot of us know that feeling. People get into relationships where somebody love bombs them, sweet talks them, basically cons them into a toxic situation where they turn out to be an energy vampire, a narcissist, whatever it is. And looking back, one of the reasons that so many people deal with shame, I think, is because a lot of times we felt a little queasy when we first interacted. But we let them sweet talk us out of it because, number one, they were very good at identifying what we needed to hear. And they told us what we needed to hear. And number two, we wanted to think the best and all that. But a lot of times I think we like to give ourselves credit for all those altruistic reasons. I wanted to think the best and all that. But you didn't want to think the best because you wanted to think the best for them. You wanted to think the best because either you want to think that you're a person that thinks the best, or probably for a lot of us, because you wanted them to keep scratching the itch they were scratching. And that's why James said, God doesn't tempt anyone. Each one is led away and deceived by his own, as you referenced it, lusts, by his own desires, needs, felt needs. And so I think that this is where we get into dealing with familiar spirits a lot. A lot of us, our spiritual discernment is way off kilter too, because as above, so below, as in the natural, so in the spirit. So your gut biome is way off. Your spiritual biome is way off too. And I'm talking to myself here.
It's connected more than you could ever imagine.
It's directly connected.
Yeah.
This is why you and I have our work cut out for us to get our health in our physical body, in our temple where it needs to be.
Right.
Because as our spiritual health improves, our physical health tends to improve as well. But we tend to hit a wall of how much spiritual health. I've learned that there's a difference. I'm going off reservation here a little bit because now I'm just saying things out loud that I've been processing internally. But I've kind of learned that I perceive that there's a difference between spiritual growth and spiritual health. I am growing by leaps and bounds spiritually, have been for years. But I need to get healthier spiritually. I deal with a lot of maladies, spiritually speaking, that I don't think I need to. It has to do with the fact that I have not gained as much healing as I have gained growth. I have become much more spiritually conversant, much more spiritually engaged and activated, and I interact in that realm a lot. But there's a lot about the way I do it that's not as healthy as it should be.
Boy. We conflate growth with health.
A lot.
And I think it was Pastor Brandon that said this.
Fender?
Yeah, Brandon
Just
Fender.
for the sake of...
Yeah. He talked about, like, understanding not all growth being good growth, because some growth is infection.
True that.
You're swollen, but it's not because anything good is happening on the inside. And we have to always...
Man.
Well, let me back up. We need to understand the things in the spirit are not all good things.
Right.
There's a very, very real spiritual world that's around us that we interface and interact with, sometimes, whether we know it or not. And so just because you're growing spiritually and becoming tuned to the things of the spirit,
aware of.
right, doesn't mean necessarily that you are healthy and growing how you need to. That's good. Keep going.
I mean, what is cancer, right? I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying, armchair perspective here. You could say, I think, from a layman's point of view, that cancer is the multiplication of cells that have become disconnected from, they're misallocated. They're in the wrong assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's growth there, often unbridled, extreme growth, right? But it's a problem because it's at odds with the health of the body.
Yeah.
So this is really what I wanted to get into ultimately tonight. We're really up in it because I think that there's a real challenge for people that are becoming spiritually aware. I'll give you an example. So I became aware of being a spiritual being probably much earlier than most people do, or many people do. Certainly I've gotten a lot of wild-eyed looks when I've told my story.
Yeah.
But the first profoundly demonic, and if you will, I would even say satanic interaction that I had, that's unambiguous, that just is what it is. It was the spirit realm interjecting into the physical realm in a very tangible way. I was 5, and it opened a door of darkness in my life that was just almost unfathomable. And that interaction made me keenly aware that that I'm a spiritual being that can move in that realm, right? I called for a meeting and I got the meeting. And when the Lord of the Flies showed up in my backyard in taking physical form, that leaves an impression on your life. You're 5. Okay. Like, I know some things now. I know that all that is not just in the Bible. I know that there's something behind all this talk that I'm hearing at church. And I'm not entirely sure what to chalk it up to, but even to this day, the preponderance of interactions that I have with the spirit realm that get to that point where they manifest into the realm of physicality and begin to blur the boundaries between the unseen realm and this dimension are negative. It has to do with the kingdom of darkness. And that's a little hard when God is a voice in your heart, but the devil can be a beast on your back porch. Like, it's, and so I hit a point when I was truly committed to surrendering my life to Jesus, because through much of my life, the lines between the realms were so blurry for me that I just, my understanding of and my way of moving through the world was just profoundly different than most of the people around me, because I was constantly having to parse what was happening in which realm. And how much of it could people around me see? And obviously, when you talk about that, it sounds like mental illness, for one thing. But I hit a point pretty early on, once I had truly surrendered to Jesus, that I told the Lord, you got to turn it off. Like, I can't with this. I don't know what this is.
It's too much.
Yeah. You know the famous line from Monk, the TV show, it's a gift and a curse. I wasn't sure about the gift. I knew the curse. Like, this thing is just too much. And a lot of times it was straight up discernment of spirits, where I would just see somebody as they actually were and not the way they were presenting themselves.
Wow.
And it made it profoundly difficult to find a church to get connected to. Yeah. After I wasn't where I had grown up. And so, the bottom line was, I told the Lord, you got to turn this off, because I can't handle knowing all that and trying to work on me. And he did. He turned it off like a switch. And for 2 years, nothing. And it was so enjoyable. Did you see the poem that I quoted? I never got to it in my notes, but a couple weeks ago I had dropped a stanza from a poem.
Oh, yeah.
In my notes at church. And let me get back to it here. So it's from Thomas Gray's Ode on a Distant Prospect of Eton College. So he's thinking back in older age to college days. And he has this stanza. To each his, and part of it folks will recognize, because we've drawn a common saying out of it, a cliche. To each his sufferings, all are men, condemned alike to groan. The tender for another's pain, the unfeeling for his own. Yet, why should they know their fate, since tomorrow never comes too late, and happiness too swiftly flies? So why should people have to know what's to come, because what's to come is coming quickly enough, right? Thought would destroy their paradise. That line right there, when you realize what this is behind, I think for most people it will change the import of a saying we use all the time. But thought would destroy their paradise. No more. The paradise would be no more. Where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. This saying that ignorance is bliss, that's really what I was leaning into when I told the Lord, shut it off. I can't handle it. And to kind of make a long story short, I lived in that state of like, thought would destroy this paradise. Like where ignorance is bliss, it's folly to be wise. And I did. I was able to put down roots. I met my wife. I got direction. I got set in the right direction. And then God had to threaten me through a prophetic word if I didn't agree to turn that back on. Whew. And so I cried uncle, and he turned it back on. And if I recall correctly, I think it was that night that a physical demon jumped out of a tree and grabbed onto my back. And like when it turned back on, it was back on.
There was no ramp up.
No ramp. Like we were just right back in it. And after a little while, I called an old prophet. I said, Mike East, I said, Brother East, like, I can't handle the noise. It's so much. And this is why I'd asked God to turn it off. And he wasn't very nice about telling me to turn it back on.
Right.
And now it's back on. I feel like I've been blackmailed into having this giftedness in operation. And I can't deal. It's just it all comes at me all at once. And I can't deal with it. I didn't have the words for it then, but now I understand I was overstimulated. And
Really?
Well, yeah, because I struggle with that IRL because
Anyway, yeah.
yeah, just in my daily life, because that's one of the aspects of neurodivergence is you tend to get all inputs at the same volume. So like one of the things that I'm subtly aware of as we're sitting here is that I'm completely aware of this light, this light, this light, this light, these screens, these mics, the way this jacket feels, the way my insides are feeling because of having wolfed down a quick dinner on the way to, like all these inputs are coming, the temperature, all of it, I'm getting them all at the same level. So when I leave here tonight, I'll be wrecked because I don't really have that filter that tells me like we don't need this information, that information, you know. So I tend to get it all at once and all at the same volume. And learning how to function through that, that's why I tend to be pretty good in crisis because
You said that all the time.
everybody else is panicking and this is just another day in paradise for me. Like,
Just like, yes.
this is
another Tuesday.
It's called life.
You're right.
So spiritually speaking, I was having that same experience. And so Mikey's response was just so simple. He just said, son, have you ever turned a dial on an old school television? I said, well, don't tell my parents, but yeah. He said, you know, when you're in between stations and you're getting some of this one, some of that one, some of the static and all that. I said, yeah. He said, that's where you are. You just need to ask the Lord to help you identify which station to be tuned into when and learn how to dial it in, and you'll get the stuff that you're supposed to get. You'll have to decide what to do with that stuff, but it's a lot less than what you're getting, which is just flashes of all of it.
That's so good.
Changed my life.
That's profound wisdom.
Really profound wisdom.
Wow.
So this is a lot of it, I think, right now, is we're all receivers and transmitters, but we're all receivers, and the inputs are so high right now that a lot of people, I think, are just, it's just they're getting a flash of this, a flash of that, a flash. And part of hearing God's voice is just to say, Father, which station are you broadcasting from? Where do you want me looking right now? You know, apparently this must be common to the human experience, even though it's so elevated in our generation, because there's an old hymn that we used to sing that says, turn your eyes on Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Whew. So apparently this is largely, we're discussing here the human experience just being had to varying degrees of intensity and in different contexts. But I think we're just experiencing a speed run in this age of something that has always been a factor, and something that Jesus probably encountered more than any of us ever will, because I can't imagine what the process must have been to learn how to walk through this world with the Spirit of God dwelling in you without measure,
Oh my goodness.
fully aware of all things on all levels at all times. You know what I mean? While maintaining poise and dignity and clarity and compassion and perspective.
I'm even thinking of like as he's on the way to heal Jairus' daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I'm focused on this mission, pushing through the crowd. And of course, we know the story. The woman with the issue of blood, she comes, she touches the hem of his garment. Power is transferred.
Have you ever thought about what the difference between her touch and everybody else's was? Because remember, that's what the disciples said to him, right?
Everybody.
He said, "Who touched me?" And they said, "Who didn't?"
Right.
I mean, which gives you a sense of like they were at Woodstock, man. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they were in a mosh pit. They were just getting jostled and pushed, and I'm sure there were guys pushing past lemonade, 3 shekels, lemonade. You know what I mean? Like it was fish, dried fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it had to be crazy.
It's chaos.
Chaos. Who touched me? Have you ever like thought through what was the difference between her touch and everybody else's?
I mean, when I've thought about that, I've always thought it was her level of intention.
There it is. That's the word.
Yeah.
Intention. That's the word. To me, like, because that's literally the word I was going to use. She touched him with intention. God responds to that. The God inside, the God within the man, the God man had it all marked as noise until there was intention in it. And when that intention was there,
You see that pattern all throughout. I don't want to stop you, Trey.
no.
But you see that, I see that pattern especially on the road to Emmaus. And you brought that out about how Jesus intended to leave them. He was going to go. But they restrained him. It was like, no, come with us, right? And so he stayed. And he was able to open up their eyes all the more. And this is kind of circling back to what we were saying as far as like our gut being the mind. And I just started making this all type of like, that's how my mind works, like connections between, like the power of fasting and allowing our gut to be empty and not work. But that's the opposite of what was happening while Jesus was here. And the other Pharisees were like, why don't your disciples fast with you here? And I love what he said. He was like, I'm here.
Yeah, we're in the party.
Right. There will be a time where I leave and they will fast.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why we fast even now.
Yeah.
To come into his presence.
Yeah.
But when we're in his presence, we're eating. We're partaking. We're enjoying him. Why would we deprive ourselves of the good and perfect gifts that come down from the Father of lights, as you just eloquently preached about? Number one, we don't know how to receive, even though we are receivers. We got to know how. Because going back to your example with the radio, if you didn't recognize the ability that you have to receive, to be a receiver, you would not have made the intentional touch point to interpret the signal that was clearly being broadcasted. There was nothing wrong with the signal. We had to just make the connection, close the loop.
Yeah. And now you've brought me back to where I was the other day with the lyrics. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax, said the night man. We are programmed to receive. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. This is a description of what we're talking about. We don't know how to receive because we've already been programmed to receive. What we're looking for is reprogramming, which involves deprogramming.
Come on.
Which is where the chaos lives. So I want to encourage people, because I would have to think that most people that are not in any stage of an awakening probably have not listened to more than a couple minutes of any of the content we're putting out. So I would tend to think that anybody that is with us by this point in any given episode is probably undergoing some kind of awakening in their life, some kind of spiritual awakening, consciousness rising, where you're trying to feel your way through a minefield of confusion and disappointment.
100%.
And the chaos is necessary, because anytime you're going to build a new structure on a used lot, you have to destroy the old structure. So don't be discouraged by the fact that everything goes haywire when you start to notice things that you didn't used to notice, or question things that you didn't used to question, but the purpose of the enemy would be either to hold you in that chaos. Remember, the word entertain means to hold within, to hold. It's to hold your attention in a certain place, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest traps, I think, so many people who are going through some kind of an awakening or coming online of a new level of awareness, is to find solace in the entertainment value, because that itch is so readily scratched now, where if you're becoming aware of things in the world that you used to take at face value, and you're now tracking the fingerprint of the unseen hand behind it, you're noticing the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Well, one of the easiest ways for darkness to keep you trapped in the matrix is to just entertain you with it. As long as you never do anything about it, you can rise to any level of awareness you want. This is what we mean by the difference between spiritual growth and spiritual health. You can come awake and become aware, as long as they can trap you, they can hold you in place by entertaining you with unlimited quantities of content about that rabbit hole that opened that for you, or the endless rabbit holes that split off from it. You're still trapped in the matrix. You just happen to know it now, but you're still trapped in the matrix. And you may even, for a time at least, fool yourself into thinking you're not, and you're better than everybody that is so stupid, all the sheeple. When you hear people say sheeple, you can take it to the bank that person is still trapped in the matrix. And if you say it, if you call people sheeple because they don't see what you see, take that as a cue that you may be aware, but you're still playing the role that you're supposed to play. because now you've become controlled opposition. You're not Antikemi. You're actually a critical part of the game, because all the players in the game of the Great Deception have a role, and some of them, it's to be awake and aware, but impotent. And that is necessary because you can't keep everybody asleep. So you need a place for people to fit within the world wide web of deception. There needs to be a place for those people to fit where they can be aware at a level but never break free. So entertainment, I think, is one of the very first traps, is you just become endlessly entertained by how aware you are and how deep down the rabbit hole you're going, and feeling very much a part of this elite club because you and these other people in your little tribe are aware of this thing. And you have to remember that you're somebody else's sheeple, because somebody else, it was a different rabbit hole that started to shake them awake. And they're looking at you and they think you're one of the normies because you're in a different rabbit hole, but they can't see the one you're in because they think the whole game is in the rabbit hole they're in.
Yeah.
So this is a critical part of, you have to remember, the Great Deception is an elaborate scheme that has been being deftly woven together over eons. And we're now in the final act, and all the players are coming online and all systems are functioning. And so there's a spot for you. You can check out anytime you want to, but you can never leave. That's
the key.
That's the thing. So the deprogramming produces chaos when your illusion is shattered by an awareness that, hey, that thing isn't what I was told that it was. And your illusion is shattered, and immediately the carnal mind, the ego, is grasping, because now you've broken free. Going back to the other episode, you're no longer pinned against the wall by the centrifugal force. Mm-hmm. Now you're falling into the guts, and you're looking for somewhere to latch on and reattach and find your identity within that machine again. And so it's designed that a lot of people can be placated by just forming a whole new egoic identity that just incorporates this new level of awareness. But all the attachments now hold you again within the machine, and now there's no problem. There's no problem for hell in you being aware. And so now what has happened, the brilliance of the deception is, actually, you are deeper in the deception than you were before. Yep. Jesus said, man, I feel the Holy Ghost. Somebody needs to hear this. Jesus said to the Pharisees, because you think you are not blind, because you say we are not blind, but we see. What did he say? What did he say? How did he word? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. You pulling it up?
Yes. Let's see here. Well, first of all, there's Revelation 3:17 spoken to this church age. Because you say, I am rich and have nothing, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing, and you do not know that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked, I advise you to buy from me gold refined in the fire. But Jesus said to the Pharisees, okay, John 9.
Verse 41.
41. So it has to do with when he opened that guy's eyes.
When they were saying, like, who sinned?
Yeah. Those of the Pharisees. So Jesus finishes, and Jesus said, verse 39, for judgment I came into the world, distinction, to make a distinction, so that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may become blind. Those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, we are not blind too, are we? Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin, but since you say we see,
your sin remains.
Okay, so one of the great layers of deception that actually traps you deeper. It's like if you're a fish and you're caught on a hook, this is the barb that keeps you, and the more you wiggle, the deeper this goes into you. That one of the first traps for people coming awake is to just be so impressed with the fact that they see and what they see. But the matrix remains, the trap remains, Babylon remains, sin and death remains, the programming remains. You have been programmed to receive. Therefore, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And so that whole process, I'm thinking back to an earlier line in the song. There she stood in the doorway, I heard the mission bell, and I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven or this could be hell. Then she lit up a candle and she showed me the way. There were voices down the corridor, and I thought I heard them say, welcome to the Hotel California, right? So this is it's a way of talking about being caught in the enemy, the fowler's snare, the enemy's web of deception designed to hold mankind in general and the church in particular within, to entertain us within the boundaries of the kingdoms of this world.
Right.
And our whole purpose in Antikemi is to have a conversation about how to lie opposite to that system, which means one of the things that we're going to have to let go of is our desperation to be a programmed receiver. We're going to have to allow ourselves to be a deprogrammed receiver for a little while so that he can wipe the slate clean. This is the same as the vessel being marred in the hand of the potter and the potter breaking it down. And making it again a new vessel, a la Jeremiah. So we're going to have to learn how to be comfortable, or not comfortable, because it's not comfortable, but we're going to have to learn how to be submitted to, at peace with. We're going to have to make our peace with going through significant moments in our life, and it happens repeatedly, of dark nights of the soul where nothing makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that place is also called, the Bible has a name for it. It's called the valley of the shadow of death. But that's why we want you to learn how to hear his voice. Because the more that you learn to identify his voice among the noise, it's not that the valley of the shadow disappears. It's not that you don't hear the howling and the shrieking and all of the stuff that comes along with your receiver being receiving all these stations at once. But you learn, oh, there he was. And you just take a step toward where you heard him. Like, where was he? Like, you will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. So the more that we can learn, oh, I think that was my father right there. I'm going to move toward that. Mm-hmm. And he's faithful. That's the thing. You don't have to worry. He's faithful. But if you don't hear him again right there, just be still. Just freeze. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to get to the bottom of it. Don't listen to another episode. Don't anesthetize the noise with noise. Inoculate yourself. Don't do any of that. Practice just being still and knowing that he's God while all of hell swirls around you. And you can't figure out which way is up and which way is down and who's true and who's a liar and what's deception and what's truth and all that. Breathe. Let God be God and every man a liar. And trust that if your father was able to get through to you once, he'll get through to you again. And wait on the Lord. I think this is a crucial skill that so many of us need to re-identify in our lives, is the ability to deal with that deprogrammed phase, because then the Lord will begin to reprogram your receiver. Mm-hmm. And have you ever been driving along at night in between stations, back when we had to wait for stations to be able to hear something? And, you know, you'd be a few hundred miles from a city, but the closer you got, the more a particular station was coming in. And you kind of know you're headed toward that city. You know, for me, a lot of times it was El Paso, because you're out in there's nothing out there.
Nothing, right.
And as you're moving toward it, there's a station that's coming in more and more often that lets you know you're still making progress. And then pretty quick, it dials in. But then you're going to keep growing and you're going to pass through El Paso. And that station's going to start to fade out. And then you'll be picking stuff up from Mexico and Colorado, Montana, and Baja California. And once again, you'll be in this space of having to be at peace with being deprogrammed while you wait for the one to begin to come through more and more. And then you can start to refine that dial and find it.
You remember this story? That's so good. And it reminds me of, I believe this is a true story. First-hand account of a pastor. He nearly lost his life on a small airplane in Alaska. Him and a lawyer friend, they were going to buy a ticket and fly commercial back home, but another pastor pilot, he convinced them to save some money and fly with them. They agreed and took off in that small airplane from Anchorage. but eventually they found themselves flying through dense clouds with no visibility. The pilot became disoriented and eventually passed out, went unconscious.
Oh my God.
The passenger pastor shook him violently, trying to wake him up to no avail. And the lawyer sitting in the back seat said, "We're all going to die, aren't we?" The pastor said, "Yeah, it's a real possibility." He then handed the microphone back to the lawyer and told him to call for help as he tried to wake the pilot. The lawyer starts yelling, "Help, help, help, is anybody there?" A bit later, a freighter pilot responded, "Is this an emergency? Don't you know any radio etiquette?" Noise. After explaining the pilot was unconscious, the freighter pilot started giving them instructions that finally got them in contact with the Anchorage airport tower.
Oh my.
The air traffic controller was very calm and gave them simple instructions on how to turn that plane around. They were headed straight towards a mountain. He repeated certain things over and over. He said, "Listen to my voice. Don't look at the storm outside. In your panic, there will be voices in your head, of course, telling you to do this or that. Don't listen to them. Listen to my voice. You can't see me, but I can see you. If you don't listen to my voice, you will die." The pastor, he listened and did everything he was instructed to do. And by this time, other pilots in the area were listening to the conversation, occasionally giving them encouragement. As they flew near Anchorage, the air traffic controller described the landing zone and the lights in the shape of a cross on the runway.
My God.
And step by step, the pastor landed the plane very much like an amateur. A total of 7 times before it finally came to stability on the runway. He had listened to my voice and their lives were saved. Crazy story, man.
Wild.
He says, "You can't see me,
I can see
but
you.
I can see you. Listen to my voice."
If you let the other voices win,
Right.
you'll die. So it's funny how this conversation's coming together because, we came back from Los Angeles to take the pastorate at Promised Land, where you and I pastor together here in Austin. My family and I came back to Austin to do that from Los Angeles, where we had been for 3 years. February 29th of 2020. Now, I'm not a person that remembers dates like that, but that one's burned in my mind. Saturday night, February 29th, right, 2020. And our plane, taxied in. We went, caught a few hours of sleep. Yep. Got up, got the kids dressed, went to church, and Bishop Phillips introduced us as the pastors. We were going to be taking the pastorate from him. Blessed us in, anointed us, installed us. And that week we had a ministers gathering in Houston. And so that always starts Thursday night. Going into Friday, one of the ministers, who was also a nurse, stood and addressed us about an upcoming health concern that seemed to be turning into a public health crisis. And by Saturday, we found out that South by Southwest here in Austin had been canceled.
They never cancel South by
No,
Southwest.
it cost them $300 million to cancel it. at which point I knew, I don't know what's going on, but I know the world is shutting down. And by the time we made it back into Austin on Saturday night, the city was meeting, trying to catch up on CDC, communiques. And first it was, you can't have more than 250 in attendance tomorrow. And then it was, you can't have more than 10 in the dead of night. They decided that. And I remember just telling everybody, we're going to pretend we didn't hear that.
Right.
Sorry, not sorry. But I called the bishop. This is our first Sunday. We've been installed. Now our first Sunday out the box.
It's insane.
And the only thing I knew about pandemics is there was bubonic plague. And I knew that my great-grandmother, my maternal great-grandmother, died at 29 years old in the great Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, so-called Spanish flu. And so I was aware of that. Sorry, those numbers are flashing. Do I need to be concerned?
No, you did.
Okay. So, so I knew those things about pandemics.
Right.
Neither of which are jokes. But I didn't. People were just starting to throw around that word. This could be. It could become. And I called the bishop. This is our first Sunday out the box as the lead pastors. I said, Bishop, they say that basically we shouldn't be gathering in public. A lot of churches are going to live feed only for tomorrow. And certainly they're saying no more than 250 in a room. Now, mind you, all you armchair quarterbacks, with all due respect, you weren't responsible for flocks of hundreds and thousands of people who are going to live or die by decisions you make. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just have so little time for people who are so stinking opinionated with their pastors, wouldn't give them the room to breathe, to try to parse their way through this. You're a shepherd, not a dictator, not a medical, like you're a shepherd. You are feeling your way through this, and you're also a sheep of the Lord. And so you're trying to hear his voice, and the noise in a moment like that is just, and this is our first Sunday. And I called the bishop and I let him know what was going on. And I said, I'm just trying to decide what to do. And he said, if you tell those people to stay home, you'll never see them again.
Whew.
And I just sat with that for a while. Because what a legacy that would be. Coming to a 80-year-old church that thrived for 52 years under the pastor before you, went through the civil rights movement, first integrated congregation in Austin.
You tank it in the first week.
Host of the hippie revival in this city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just tank it. Like, so I'm just sitting. But then on the other hand, I don't want to kill people because I'm trying to hold on to legacy. And I said, God, I need a word from you that will take me through whatever this is about to be. And he said, look up the word conspiracy in your Bible app. Which was a word I have to admit I have never looked in a concordance for. And I also, like a lot of y'all listening to this story now, you're like, well, yeah, of course God told you to look that up. We didn't know all this.
Right.
This is 2025 when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Cut a guy a break. I didn't have any clue why he would say that to me.
You don't have the luxury of knowing the end of the story.
This is why it's so crucial to allow this process to play out in your life as many times as possible, because one of these times it's not going to be a dry run, and you're either going to know his voice or not. And so I went to my app, put in conspiracy. Several examples came up, but Isaiah 8 was like it was on fire. It was just leapt out at me. So I went to it. In Isaiah 8, he is speaking about the destruction of, I think, Damascus, and it's the king of Assyria is going to carry off Damascus, and that's where God, it's a weird story. God tells him to name this kid Mahar Shalal Hashbaz, run to the prey, hurry to the booty. Why can't I identify Isaiah on this? They're all swimming in front of me right now.
Is it Isaiah 8?
Yeah, here we go. Isaiah 8. Okay, so yeah,
Verse 12.
Write a billboard. Swift is the booty, speedy is the prey, and this verse I just find so funny. So I approached the prophetess, verse 3. So I approached the prophetess, and she conceived and gave birth to a son.
Yeah.
So I approached the prophetess, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. Then the Lord said, name him Mahar Shalal Hashbaz, for before the boy knows how to cry out Abba or Ima, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. Okay. So listen to this. He's telling the Lord is, because they're lifted up in pride, and they think that they're planted by the water. I'm about to overflow the Euphrates on them and sweep on into Judah, and it will overflow and pass through. It'll be up to people's necks. Verse 9, he says, be broken, O peoples, and be shattered. Give ear, all remote places of the earth. Gird yourselves, yet be shattered. Gird yourselves, yet be shattered. So twice he said, get up and get dressed, but be shattered. Devise a plan, but it will be thwarted. Listen to this. I mean, now, looking back, I'm like, if you don't think the word of God is alive and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, think about this being the verses leading up to the one that he drew my attention to. Be broken, O peoples, and be shattered, and give ear, all remote places of the earth. Get up and get dressed, yet be shattered. Get up and get dressed, yet be shattered. Devise a plan, but it will be thwarted. State a proposal, but it will not stand. For God is with us. For thus Yehovah spoke to me with mighty power and instructed me not to walk in the way of this people, saying, you are not to say it is a conspiracy in regard to all that this people call a conspiracy. And you are not to fear what they fear, or be in dread of it. It is the Lord of hosts whom you should regard as holy, and he shall be your fear, and he shall be your dread. Then he shall become a sanctuary.
Come on.
But to both the houses of Israel, a stone to strike and a rock to stumble over, which is Christ Jesus, and a snare and a trap for the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Many will stumble over them, then they will fall and be broken. They will even be snared and caught. Bind up the testimony, seal the decree among my disciples, or the teaching, the law among my disciples. And I will wait for Yehovah, who is hiding his face, and I will even look eagerly for him. And so,
Man, that's good.
Again, just going back to me sitting in the Embassy Suites I think that was a Best Western premiere, actually, in Houston, talking to Brother Phillips on the phone and then telling the Lord, I need a word that I can anchor to go through whatever is about to happen. And that's what he says. Look up conspiracy. And then he shows me that one. And then I go there, and I didn't even understand how salient the context of it was. I just knew that he said to me, you are not to walk in the way of this people. You are not to say it is a conspiracy in regard to all that this people call a conspiracy, and you are not to fear what they fear or be in dread of it.
Yeah.
It is Yehovah of hosts whom you should regard as holy, and he shall be your fear and your dread. Then he shall become a sanctuary. So, but now I understand that he was telling me, this is how you walk through a moment when I am shaking the earth, when no matter what plan the kingdoms of this world devise, I have come down. I'm here. That's what he said. The Lord of hosts is with us. I am here. Like, that's not the same as Emmanuel, God with us. That's the Lord came down to look at Sodom and Gomorrah. That's, I'm here wrecking shop. You know, I'm handing out flowers and kicking butt, and I'm all out of flowers. Mm-hmm. And so this is how you walk through it. You don't move like the rest of the people do. You don't fear what they fear, and you don't get caught up in all the conspiracy talk. You just move forward. Yeah. And fear the Lord. And so the outflow of that was that through most of the pandemic years, I really didn't pay almost any attention to the news. I didn't have to. People all around me were. So I kept hearing anything that touched my life. Right. But I really disconnected from the news. And the reason for that was there was no other way. What became clear to me by 2 months in or something was that there was no other way not to fear what they feared and not to be in dread of what they were in dread. I didn't need to know every time there was a new variant, every time there was you know what I mean? I'd find out when someone in the flock got it. And so we made a lot of decisions in prayer and fasting about how to lead our flock through that. And by the grace of God, we were one of the first churches, certainly in the circles we were moving in, to come back. Our congregation was very elderly skewed at that point. And a lot of them just stayed home by choice for quite a while. But we were amongst the first in our circle, certainly, to come back to live services. No judgments. We did everything we could to
Really quickly.
make people comfortable. I'll say this, bro. The grace of God was with us because the vast majority of the churches that didn't do that have not recovered.
Not at all.
A lot of them have closed their doors, and ones that haven't just are a shadow of what they were. We lost people. I'm not playing like we didn't. We lost people. A few died, but mostly we lost some people because everybody got shaken in that season, and I was a new voice for them. And but we were not destroyed by any means, by the grace of God, by any means. And that I just told you a little while ago, I'm a person that tends to get all inputs at the same level. Mm-hmm. So if I had been getting as much noise, in other words, the way for me to lead in that moment was to let the noise filter to me through the people around me and deal with whatever level of it actually got escalated to my desk. Because if I was just out there in the zeitgeist getting all the same inputs everybody else was getting, I would have been so inundated with conflicting information and opposing opinions and theories that I wouldn't have been able to begin to filter through that to make some decisions for how to lead the Lord's people. So a consequence of that was I was completely unaware, blissfully ignorant of the politics of what was happening. I didn't pick up on the political piece of it till pretty late in the game because I was just trying to make decisions for our flock as they arose and as stuff got escalated to my desk. And the Lord was faithful, and we didn't do it perfectly, but we led through it and we made decisions as we needed to. But most of the people who left, I would venture to say nearly to a person, the people that I'm aware of who left our flock, left because they attached political significance to one or the other of a decision that I made or that we made.
That's right.
And that was a mistake because that voice wasn't in the mix for me. And so by the time I became aware that on some level there was a conspiracy going on, I don't know to this moment exactly what it was, but if you don't know by now that we weren't told the whole truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I don't know what to tell you. We were not told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Here's the thing. We never are. We never are. And I can prove it to you. Because when you're managing a crisis in your family, do you tell do you tell all your kids the whole thing?
No. Why would I do that?
How would you lead them if you did?
Right.
The advantage is you have their best interests at heart. But somebody's got to lead this nation. Somebody has to lead the international treaties that govern our world. And they have lots of different conflicting motives. And there are lots of different spiritual forces in play, principalities, powers, thrones, dominions, behind their viewpoints and their interests. So even when you are trying to lead a tiny pod of people called a family, and you have nothing but their best interests at heart, you don't tell them the whole story all the time.
Because it's a need to know basis.
Bro. And this goes back to that thing that we were talking about recently on a recent episode about what was the banking word that I was using to talk about when you have the information.
I got you. It's in the trusty show notes.
Yeah, there you go.
Arbitrage.
Arbitrage. So it goes back to that discussion about arbitrage, because influence is essentially trafficking in information. Mm-hmm. Being able to influence people one direction or another comes down to what you know and what they know and don't know. And there's a quote that probably most of us have heard: never waste a good crisis.
Yeah.
People attribute it to Churchill, Rahm Emanuel. Some people think it originates with Saul Alinsky.
Really?
Yeah. Who, among other things, wrote the handbook on how to lead basically a resistance revolution within a society. And there's something also Machiavellian about that statement as well. Everybody that's ever been in a position of leadership knows that crisis is a good moment to affect change. Mm-hmm. So we can have all kinds of discussions about how a crisis develops and to what degree it is engineered or not. None of that really matters at the end of the day. Like, it can be interesting and it can shed light on a situation, but if you really want to know, you don't really have to know how the crisis came to be to understand how it's being used.
Come on.
And you do have to learn how to triage information like that when you're trying to learn how to pick your way through the noise. Sometimes you don't need to sometimes, if I could put it this way, sometimes when we're talking about this trap of entertainment that gets people as they're becoming aware, sometimes the impulse to get to the bottom of who done it is pretty masturbatory, mentally masturbatory.
Self-gratified.
Yeah, you just want the dopamine rush of knowing that you know. And the truth is, most of these rabbit holes, there is no bottom. There's no bottom on most of them. It's meant to keep
you in the same loop.
Oh my God. It's probably a circle that's just so big that you don't know you've already been here before. And so a lot of times you don't need to know who engineered it or to what degree it was engineered or whatever to understand how it's being used. And you can look at these global crises and go, oh, that's being used. And then we know that the motives of those in positions of power and prestige are mixed at best. And we know that they are operating in offices of dominion that are controlled by the kingdoms of darkness at this time. And so ultimately, what was the pandemic a mass conditioning event, an opportunity to roll out the next stage of the New World Order or global? Of course it was. It was a global crisis. Why wouldn't it be? Anything that can impact the whole world on that kind of a level, whether it was engineered or not, is going to be used that way. So I didn't have to know what everybody around me was trying to figure out in order to go to the Lord with each crisis as it arose in our congregation and ask him for wisdom about how to address this situation. So the people that were making these associations to politics and drawing conclusions, in the beginning, it was very confusing for me because I could not it was like they were speaking Greek to me. Mm-hmm. I can't believe. I mean, I got approached like this quite a few times. I can't believe that you're supposed to be holding up a standard of righteousness. I can't believe that you would align with. And I would just be stupefied because I would be thinking, I could swear I just woke up this morning, called some brothers and sisters that I trust, prayed about an issue, made a decision, and kept moving. I don't know when all this happened that you're talking about, where I backed the candidate you're against. And I'm getting it from both sides equally about every decision. And so I very quickly recognized, by the grace of God, I can't convince these people otherwise. Even before I knew where they were getting it from, I knew I couldn't convince them otherwise. And so I just prayed for them, blessed them, sent them on their way. And it enabled me to keep a clear mind under pressure and hear from the Lord imperfectly. And then on the other side of it, as things began to calm down, the Lord began to pull in threads and show me little pieces of insight that I needed to understand what had just happened in our planet. But the faithfulness of God was, he enabled me to function in like a little mini cosmos of our congregation and my family until the valley of the shadow, until we were through the valley of the shadow. Then he turned me around and let me see all of the pitfalls and snares that he had just brought me across that I was not aware of. And then he began to show me the conspiracy from my prayer closet. And instead of being confused and dismayed, I was, number one, stunned at the goodness of God and his wisdom in being able to guide us through something like that so deftly. Yeah. And number two, deeply grateful that he had given me that word to hang my hat on. And then number three, when the pieces fell into place for me, I was able to see kind of a big picture of what had happened. And I've noticed that to this moment, a lot of people still haven't been able to do that. Yeah. They're still mad about the jab or mad about what, and they haven't been able to see what really happened because they're still down some rabbit hole. Whereas the hand of the Lord will pick you up and set you on a mountaintop.
Yes, it will.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. No, that's good. I did not know even the level of detail behind the scenes. And I've heard that story as far as him taking you to Isaiah 8 before, but it just hit different even now. You're absolutely right. The word of God, the Bible says, is
Gotta go
sharper
in
than
my
any
magic
two-edged
bag.
sword, and dividing between joints and marrow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at joints and marrow, how thin. Talk about thin slicing earlier
Thin
before.
slicing.
Thin slicing.
Good callback.
You know? And so that's what the word of God can do. Notice that it was through an intimacy, a consistent prayer life, where you didn't have to go on no 10-day fast in consecration and call up 2, 3, 4, 5 people. You knew the voice of a trusted source with the overseer, and you knew the voice of your father. And then you were obedient to both. Because notice how the voice of the bishop was not out of alignment with the voice of the father.
No.
And so you were able to marry those two voices and properly make the next step that has guided our congregation through literally the depths of hell, what we have walked through. And to do all that in the first week of a pastorate, like, and I know you don't tell that story to like give yourself accolades or toot your horn or anything like that,
No.
but I do think that it does highlight a very real world 4K example. Hearing the voice of God, knowing the voice of God, and then doing what he tells you. What did James say? If
any of you lack wisdom, is that the one?
let him ask of God, but he also said for us not to be hearers of the
Oh,
word
yeah.
only, but doers.
Yeah.
It's sad because in the days of Noah, man preached, and the voice of God was echoing through him daily, probably. And the people around him, it wasn't like they were foreign to phenomena, right? But they couldn't hear that voice of God through that man. It was just ranting. It was just craziness. And the same way they encountered rain at that type of magnitude before is how we experience this pandemic at this type of magnitude for our generation, at least. With the amount of, I think there's been other like pandemics, like you mentioned before, with your family and your lineage, but there's been no one in our past that's had it from all the different sides that we did.
No.
So you have the amount of panic mixed in with the amount of propaganda. Like that's a different level of overload of like you don't know what to believe, how to believe, who to listen to. But they're kind of like you intentionally going in, shutting the door, going into your inner room, listening to the voice of God. I think this episode is really going to help some people to know how to hear the Lord's voice, because it's not getting any easier, and it's not going to get better. Like, and we can kind of end on this because I need people to really know that these things that are happening right now being escalated, right? Like things are rapidly happening. And it's a desensitizing of our conscience. Our consciences are being seared. Our souls are being afflicted. Our minds are being confused. And our mouths are being shut when they should be speaking life. And when they should be quiet and listening, they're speaking word curses over themselves. I think it's so paramount for us to re-examine the Word of God. Read it again, read it again, pray each and every time you read it, seek understanding, chase after wisdom, put yourself in a position where he doesn't have to knock you out to talk to you. He doesn't have to use numbers and patterns only to get your attention. He doesn't have to disrupt your circadian rhythm of sleep in order to get your attention. Like, man.
One of the through threads of all these events that are happening is that so one of the things to look for if you want to learn wisdom, because of that, you said it's not getting any easier, but it is becoming imperative. Mm-hmm. Like, God's people can no longer depend upon their pastors and that kind of thing. Certainly not their Christian celebrities and denominations and political parties, but even your local pastor and stuff. Life is coming at us so hard and so fast, and the layers are building up so quickly of deception and falsehood and theater that's playing out in the public eye, and it's all happening so quickly. One thing, if you want to learn wisdom, is look for through threads. So try not to get hung up on this event, this trauma, that trauma. One big key is when everybody's looking over here, look over there.
Yep.
Like, that's a big key. Just be careful of always being in the mix of what everybody's talking about right now. You would often do better to be a little behind the curve and find out more. For me, even just doing that by about a week helps tremendously. If I don't really get tangled up in something until about a week later, if I really want to understand it, I can go in then and look at it. But you'll miss about 8 layers of confusion, pandemonium, noise, the rollout of information, disinformation, reinformation, all that stuff. So you'll be coming into it without a lot of confirmation bias and stuff like that other people already have. Number one, you will have been able to still observe what was happening in the broader world because you weren't looking where they were telling you to look. And number two, by the time you do take a look at it, you'll actually be able to see everybody in their isolated pods. By the time you get there, they've already been sorted into the little clans. And so one of the through threads in all these events, if you pay attention, and the through threads help you understand what's happening at a much higher level than the individual details of each situation. I'm saying 9/11, COVID, the war on terror, 9/11, the war on terror, COVID, the financial downturn, all the way down to, the Israel-Palestine war, Russia, Ukraine, the U.S. elections, Charlie Kirk, all these things, much better than being totally lost in those things as they play out. if you come to them a little bit later, you'll notice everybody's already, a through thread is that they all filter everybody into these increasingly fractured micro groups. Mm-hmm. So the through thread is everybody's becoming more and more isolated and more entrenched in their positions, and more unable to comprehend what is causing other people to go into their little isolation chambers. And so what you're getting is degrees of separation, increasing degrees of separation between people. So what's the through thread here? Isolation and opposition. Like swords are being turned on each other, mm-hmm. and people are being isolated, because the end game here is to have everyone totally isolated.
Yep.
And so if you think about it this way, we are the vessels of the living water. When Ezekiel saw the last day church, he saw water flowing out from under the door of the temple down through the rivers and into the Dead Sea, and healing the Dead Sea. And everywhere that the water went, the river went. Everywhere that the river from under the door of the temple went, the waters of that place were healed all the way to the Red Sea, and fish lived in them. And so as the carriers of that living water, as each of us having the door of the temple within us from which that living water is supposed to be flowing out, what's happening is we're being poured into ice trays and frozen in place. And so we're being kept from our assignment, which is to go out and invade the salt water of death all around us with life and bringing healing. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that I want people to pay attention to is resisting the temptation to be lured into every pocket. Do not say it is a conspiracy of everything that this people calls conspiracy. That doesn't mean it's not conspiracy. What he said is, you shall not say it is a conspiracy.
Cabal.
Shut your mouth. Your voice is not. Do you really think? That's why it took us so long to decide to do this podcast. There are amazing podcasts out here that I love and listen to and want to interview and dream of getting to meet the hosts, and who are diving all the way down these rabbit holes that are available. And they're doing a great job. And some of them are really glorifying God with it. But my question was like, do we need another one? Like,
right.
But the thing is, our job on this one is to come in and say, hey guys, if you're drowning in it, here are some things that have been helping us learn to parse truth, to hear our Father's voice through the noise, and to resist the inertia, the pull to play our role in this systematic deception that is playing out in the world, and to walk free of confusion and mental fog and inner turmoil. And so that's our job. We're here, and people are already saying, like, talk about this. Why don't you talk about that? And it's not that we never will. We did. Like an episode or two ago, we addressed a current issues thing because it felt to us like it was enough of an example of a way that these things play out that it'll still be salient if the Lord tarries years from now.
Yeah.
To help people understand, if somebody runs across it, how this stuff works. But we're largely resisting that temptation unless we see that broader value in it, because there's a million places you can go to get really good information along those lines. We're not trying to get you down a rabbit hole. We're actually trying to help you come up for air and find the path no foul thing knows, through it all, get some solid ground underfoot, get grounded, and begin to move forward with a level of clarity and peace, which is the key to being one of his sheep in this, not a sheeple, a sheep.
That's good.
Of the Father in this world. And so I think that one of the key markers for me is doing what, by the grace of God, I was able to do, withdraw from the noise enough to be able to identify the voice of your Father. Don't worry about defending yourself, because you have to remember all these people that are caught in that, and they're hearing everything through those filters that are causing them to misunderstand your attempt to follow the shepherd's voice and to attach all kinds of matrix-related meaning to everything that you do. If you notice, the Lord doesn't go around defending himself from that. Jesus didn't go around defending himself from that. The thing that is most helpful when people come at you with that is just to recognize, oh, they're kind of caught in it right now, and just be kind, be prayerful, be aware that you have been there many times, and that you're probably almost certainly there in some ways right now that you're not aware of, and because we all are. And so one of the things that, you referenced, that what the bishop said and what God was saying were not in conflict. Here's another neat example of how that worked. When it did come time to make a tough decision about whether we were going to meet or not, because we met that week and 249 people showed. We had an overflow for if 250 came, but so half the congregation came, almost to a person, 249 people. The week before, there had been 505 in attendance, and then 249 showed. And so we came in just under that 250 and all that. But the following week, there was more of a decision to be made. And in that moment, I reached out to Dr. Willis, who's another one of our overseers, and I said, look, the bishop said this thing to me. If you tell these people to stay home, they'll never be back. And he said, I don't remember his exact words, but he said, essentially, Bishop was anointed by God to lead this flock in his generation. And now you are anointed by God to lead this flock in your generation. Bishop's right from a people business perspective. What he told you is something you need to know. Experience teaches. You don't want to lift that expectation. People who close a Wednesday service don't get a Wednesday service back. That's another miracle here. God revived our midweek service.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work that way. And what was amazing about it was I was not experienced enough as a pastor to know that. So God used the bishop to make me aware of a lifetime's worth of wisdom garnered from experience. Now, because the bishop made this statement to me, if you tell those people to stay home, you'll never see them again. Now I had a lifetime's worth of wisdom undergirding the very serious decision about what to do that week. And we did go online for a few weeks. But because of what that word of caution, we did things like drive-through prayer lines. We did
So touch points.
A lot of touch points that we would not have done, and we came back to live services much quicker than the vast majority of people around us did. And the only churches I know that are still thriving did similar things. And I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but I'm just not aware of them. So that's another aspect of that, is learning how to hear your Father's voice. I'm not convinced that it was God that said to me, if you tell those people to stay home, you'll never see them again. But what I do think my Father's voice in that was downloading a lifetime of experiential wisdom into me in one sentence. Now I understood the gravity of what we were being asked to do. And I understood when a moment came that I knew, because what happened was just a few weeks later, and I know you already told them we're ending, but I just want to make sure they carry this clarity. A few weeks later, when it was clear to me and clear to those around me that this whole thing about 2 weeks to flatten the curve and all that was bogus. That was just to keep the natives quiet.
Right.
While they conditioned us to, because it's incredible how adaptable the human creature is. So they knew that if they could just give us a reason to quit fighting them for 2 weeks, we would settle into a new inertia that quick. They knew that.
That's all it took.
So they told us 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And when they came back with the just kidding, we were like, okay, now we got some things to pray about. And within a couple weeks, we made the decision, a few weeks, we made the decision to come back, because we hit a point where we understood how to be careful about this thing, and we understood enough for everybody to make their own decisions as the priests of their own households about where and when to get out of their houses. And so it became clear to me at that point, as the shepherd of the house, it's now their responsibility as to how they approach coming into a public space. It's our responsibility to be as gracious as we can and give people a level of space, because a lot of people were feeling uncomfortable and all that. We made what accommodations we could. But the point is that we hit a point pretty early where I realized, okay, the only voice that would keep us from assembling now is fear. Because there was wisdom. There was a lot we didn't know, a lot we didn't understand. There was maybe give our government the benefit of the doubt for a little while. They're asking for 2 weeks. They're not telling. In our context in the state of Texas, there was no, you cannot. I don't know what I would have done if we had been told you can't, but I feel like that likely would have been a different conversation, because you lose liberties you don't defend. And so there's a whole other. So bottom line is, there came a point where it was like fear and fear of man are the only things that would keep us from making corporate worship available to those who feel comfortable coming now. And so that was our cue. Well, we're going to make it available again, and we're going to trust the Lord's people to be mature and make the decisions they need to make for their house. So it was the Lord used the bishop's caution to me to make me aware of how serious the equation we were running was, what the stakes really were. And so you'll learn that about hearing the voice of God, that he speaks through human vessels and it comes through with a human accent.
Yes.
But if you know the voice of your Father, you can go, I see the field, I see the pearl. And so the pearl was, hey, this is serious. You're being asked to do something that's not a good idea in the people business. So you'll learn how to hear and it was through Dr. Andrew Willis saying to me, you're God's man to lead this congregation in this situation. The bishop doesn't have the grace to make that decision for this congregation now because he handed that baton to you. So now you've got the grace to make it. So make the best call you can make and trust God.
Yeah.
And so God will speak to you through situations, through signs, through dreams, through comments, through a line in a movie, believe it or not, through a billboard, and it won't be that God said that thing. It will be that he will download something to you.
That's good.
Through it. And if you can learn to start to pick up some of those cues, you'll become more and more adept at what they sound like, what they look like. But in order to do any of this, you have to create space, like that girl was saying in that TikTok at the beginning of this episode. You have to create space for that to happen in. And so that requires becoming somewhat intentional about when, where, how, for how long you insert yourself into the zeitgeist of the cultural conversation going on around you. Because Malachi 3:16, those who feared the Lord spoke often one to another.
That's right.
And so you'll become more attuned if you'll withdraw a little bit from that noise and recognize that the news is going to happen whether or not you're there. Those arguments are going to play out on social media whether or not you insert yourself. You don't have to argue with every flat earther or globe earther you see.
Yeah, you don't.
No matter which side of that you're on, half the time you're losing your peace fighting with a bot.
That's right.
You are literally losing your mind, melting down on how can this person be this much of a moron? And it's a bot that was designed to pull that out of you.
Yep.
And the rest of the time you're dealing with someone who was programmed by that and so on and so forth. So pull back a little. Don't feel the need to throw your hat in the ring so much. And I know we say a lot of the same things over and over. I don't think that's going to stop because that's how we're learning it too, is like we have to remind ourselves of these things and practice how to apply them. And there are themes, and one of those themes is you got to create space, you got to create silence, you got to create stillness on purpose in your life, even for small periods of time. And just ask the Lord for the thing you're wanting from him. Clarity, wisdom, direction, more awareness of his voice, and do the things that tune your receiver, which are so simple. Fasting, prayer, fellowship with the saints, quiet time, meditation, journaling. Like, it's all so simple. It's super simple stuff. Just do stuff that feeds the soul and feeds the spirit and denies the body, basically.
And without you even knowing it, or maybe you did, I think you closed the loop too to what I originally asked you at the beginning. Why would somebody want to leave Babylon?
Yeah.
And that's why.
Yeah.
Because the overload, the noise is going to overwhelm you.
Yeah.
But you leaving, or at least shutting off the noise and going into the inner room, that's how you're going to be able to hear the voice of your Father.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because in Babylon, everything in Babylon is designed to feed the beast, and you're the food. That's why you want to leave Babylon. because you're the product. You think you're the consumer, but you're not. That's corn. You're being fattened. So in Babylon, you're the food. You're the product. You're what's being trafficked. You're the commodity. So come out of her.
Whoo! So with that being said, we're going to close that out because I need to let that sizzle. Sizzle in their spirit. We love you. Thank you for tuning in once again.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Yeah, help us out. Get the word out, please. If it's blessing you, share it with somebody. Because somebody needs to hear this stuff. I really believe that. I know we're stumbling our way through it, but somebody needs to hear this.
Absolutely. Amen.
We're praying for you.
Love y'all.